There is a specific delay in your life you have never fully understood, a season that has stretched on longer than you expected, and I want you to know before anything else tonight that this delay has never once meant your story was standing still. I know exactly what this waiting has cost you, and I know exactly what it has quietly been building toward the entire time. Every ordinary day of this season has been counted, every quiet disappointment noticed, every small hope you have continued carrying despite the lack of visible progress. You have wondered, more than once, whether this particular season would ever actually move forward, watching months pass without any visible sign of the progress you were hoping for. That specific wondering has likely visited you at unexpected moments, an ordinary evening, a quiet drive, the question simply surfacing on its own without any obvious trigger prompting it. You have prayed for clarity more times than you have told anyone, tired of feeling like your own life was paused while everyone around you seemed to keep moving. Have you ever looked back at a long season of waiting and wondered whether anything was genuinely happening beneath the surface, or whether the stillness you felt was simply stillness, nothing more? I did not come to you tonight to tell you that stillness was empty. I came to tell you something you do not know yet. Every delay in your story has been building toward this exact season, and what looked like nothing happening has actually been the most important part of the entire process. You have not been standing still. You have been growing in exactly the way growth actually happens, quietly, beneath the surface, long before anything becomes visible above it. Hold on to that image. I want you to sit with that truth for a moment tonight, letting it settle fully rather than rushing past it the way you may have rushed past every other reassurance offered to you during this exact season. Stay with me tonight, because what I am about to show you will change the way you understand every season of waiting you have ever assumed was simply wasted time. Give this moment your full attention, because it carries more weight than an ordinary evening usually does. There is a particular exhaustion in waiting for something you cannot yet see any evidence of, showing up faithfully to your ordinary days while privately wondering whether this specific season of your life will ever actually move forward the way you have been hoping it would. This exhaustion rarely announces itself dramatically. It shows up instead as a quiet tiredness carried into otherwise ordinary tasks, a heaviness that follows you even into moments unrelated to the actual waiting itself. You have learned to measure your own progress against other people's visible timelines, watching their lives seem to unfold with a clarity yours has not yet offered you, wondering privately what specifically made your own story require so much more patience before anything became visible. This comparison rarely brings genuine relief. It simply deepens the specific ache of not yet having anything visible to point toward as evidence your own season is actually moving forward. You have wondered whether this waiting is actually leading somewhere, or whether you have simply misunderstood what you thought you were supposed to be waiting for in the first place. Do you know the exact season this particular waiting began? The specific moment you first realized this part of your life was going to take longer than you originally expected it to. Whether that realization arrived suddenly or gradually, both carried exactly the same weight in shaping the specific patience this season has since required of you. There is an exhaustion in carrying a season like this one for as long as you have, continuing to hope while everything around you offers no visible confirmation that the hope is actually justified. This exhaustion shows up most clearly in quiet, unguarded moments, a late evening, a long drive, a pause between tasks where the question simply surfaces on its own without any obvious trigger prompting it. Some of you carry a private fear that this delay means something has gone wrong, that the plan you once believed in has quietly stalled or been forgotten entirely, that you are somehow responsible for a stillness you never actually chose. I want to release that specific fear from you tonight. You are not responsible for this timeline, and this stillness was never a sign of anything being forgotten or abandoned. You have prayed about this specific season more times than you have told anyone, sometimes with real faith and sometimes simply because you did not know what else to do with the waiting. Every single one of those prayers reached me exactly as fully as any confident, expectant prayer ever could, regardless of which specific emotion accompanied it at the time it was spoken. I see the version of you that keeps showing up faithfully despite this uncertainty, and the version that wonders, on your hardest nights, whether any of it is actually leading anywhere, and I want you to know both versions are equally known to me, equally loved by me, neither one required to have this fully resolved before you come to me honestly about it. There is no version of this waiting that requires managing or hiding in front of me, the hopeful version and the tired version equally welcome, equally seen. You are not stuck. You are not forgotten. You are simply someone who has not yet been shown how much has actually already been happening beneath the surface of this exact waiting. Let that specific truth settle fully into you tonight, releasing whatever assumption you have carried that this season has been unproductive simply because it has been quiet. When a season of waiting stretches on this long, it becomes tempting to believe that breakthrough must arrive through a very specific mechanism, and to fixate so completely on that one expected path that you miss an entirely different door opening right in front of you. There is a man in Scripture who did exactly this for an extraordinary length of time. A man had been an invalid for 38 years, lying near a pool in Jerusalem believed to have healing properties whenever its waters were stirred. He explained to Jesus that he had no one to help him into the water at the right moment, someone else always reaching it before him. Consider the specific frustration of watching that exact scenario repeat itself year after year, close enough to witness the healing waters stirring, and yet never quite fast enough to actually reach them first. His entire understanding of how his healing would arrive was built around this one specific mechanism, a mechanism that had failed him for nearly 4 decades. Jesus did not ask him to finally reach the water in time. He simply told him plainly to get up, take his mat, and walk, healing him instantly through a method the man had never once considered possible after 38 years of fixating on the only path he believed could work. Consider how completely this must have reoriented everything the man believed about how his own healing was actually going to arrive, an answer that bypassed the entire system he had spent decades building his hope around. Have you ever fixated so completely on one specific way breakthrough was supposed to arrive that you nearly missed an entirely different door opening right in front of you? That specific tendency rarely comes from stubbornness. It usually comes from genuine hope, a natural desire to hold on to a clear, specific picture of what the answer is supposed to look like. Some of you have done a quieter version of exactly what this man did, so certain about the specific shape your own breakthrough had to take that you have overlooked other doors quietly opening around you, doors that did not match the picture you had already decided was the only possible answer. None of this makes you foolish beyond repair. It makes you human, understandably attached to a specific picture of how your own waiting was supposed to resolve, the same way this man had every reasonable justification to believe the water was his only real hope after 38 years of watching it fail him. You may recognize this exact attachment in your own waiting, holding tightly to one specific expected outcome simply because it is the version you have had the most time to imagine and hope for. I did not heal that man through the mechanism he had spent decades believing in. His decades of waiting near that pool were never wasted, even though the actual answer arrived through a completely different path than the one those decades had been spent anticipating. I am not asking you to abandon hope for your own specific picture of breakthrough. I am asking you to remain open to the possibility that the actual answer may look nothing like what you have spent this entire season expecting it to look like. This openness does not require you to abandon your own hopes. It simply requires you to leave a little room for the possibility that the actual answer may arrive wearing a shape you did not originally anticipate. I want you to hear something important underneath this warning. Whatever specific picture of breakthrough you have been holding on to, I am not asking you to release it entirely tonight. Whatever picture you have been holding, it likely reflects something genuinely good you are hoping for, not a mistake that needs correcting. I am simply inviting you to hold it a little more loosely, trusting that I am fully capable of answering this waiting in a way you have not yet considered. There is a short parable Jesus told that captures exactly what has actually been happening during this entire season of your waiting, and it is the clearest picture I can give you tonight of the delay you have not fully understood. Jesus described the kingdom of heaven as being like a man who scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how it happens. Scripture tells us plainly that the earth produces grain all by itself, first the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. The farmer in this parable does not understand the mechanism of growth, and he does not need to. The growth happens regardless of his understanding, steadily, invisibly, beneath the surface of the soil, long before anything becomes visible above it. Consider how little control the farmer actually has over the exact timing of this process, unable to speed it along through effort alone, unable to fully explain how a single seed becomes a stalk and then a head and then a full kernel. Have you ever planted something, literally or figuratively, and then found yourself checking on it repeatedly, searching for visible progress during the exact season when the most important growth was actually happening entirely underground, out of view? That specific instinct to check repeatedly rarely speeds anything along. It simply adds anxiety to a process that was already unfolding exactly as it needed to, regardless of how closely it was being watched. This parable was never meant to describe a single agricultural process. It was meant to describe how the entire kingdom of heaven actually works, growth happening steadily, invisibly, according to its own necessary timeline, whether or not the person waiting understands exactly how or exactly when it is unfolding. This same principle applies fully to whatever specific season you are currently living inside, growth continuing on its own necessary timeline regardless of how much or how little of the actual process you are currently able to see or understand. This is what I want you to receive about your own season tonight. The waiting you have experienced was never empty stillness. It was the underground portion of a growth process every bit as real as the visible portion still to come, the blade and the head and the full kernel all still fully on their way, even during the exact days it looked to you like nothing at all was happening. Trust that this same pattern is currently unfolding in your own life, an underground process doing genuine, necessary work long before it ever becomes visible to you or anyone watching from the outside. The farmer in this parable never once needed to understand the mechanism of growth in order for the growth to be completely real. You do not need to fully understand this current season of your own life in order for everything I am building through it to be completely, genuinely real too. Release, tonight, whatever pressure you have carried to fully understand this season before trusting it. Understanding was never actually required for this growth to already be genuinely underway. Let me show you what this looks like in a life closer to yours than an ancient field or an ancient pool ever could. There was a woman named Kayamika who had been searching for stable work for nearly 2 years after an unexpected layoff, applying to countless positions that matched her exact experience and qualifications, watching each one end in silence or in a polite rejection that offered no real explanation. Each rejection chipped away slightly at her confidence, even as she continued applying with the same diligence she had maintained from the very beginning of the search. She had built her entire expectation of breakthrough around finding a role identical to the one she had lost, convinced that anything else would represent some kind of failure or step backward. She turned down 2 smaller opportunities during those 2 years specifically because they did not match the exact picture of success she had already decided was the only acceptable outcome. During those same 2 years, almost as an afterthought, she had begun volunteering a few hours a week teaching a community workshop related to a personal hobby she had never once considered turning into an actual career. She almost declined the initial invitation to teach that workshop, uncertain whether she had the time or energy to spare during an already discouraging season. She approached it purely for enjoyment, a small bright spot during an otherwise discouraging season, with absolutely no expectation that it carried any real professional significance. It simply gave her something to look forward to during weeks that otherwise felt dominated entirely by rejection and uncertainty. A person who attended one of these workshops eventually offered her a position at a growing company built entirely around the specific skill she had been teaching purely for enjoyment, a role that ended up paying significantly more than anything she had been applying for during those same 2 years, and that she found far more genuinely fulfilling than her original career path had ever been. That specific offer arrived on an entirely ordinary evening, following a workshop session that felt no different from any of the dozens that had come before it. Kayamika later reflected that if she had received the exact job she originally wanted at any point during those 2 years, she never would have continued teaching that workshop, and she never would have discovered the actual path that was quietly, invisibly forming underneath the surface of what looked, at the time, like simple unemployment and repeated rejection. She described this realization as both humbling and deeply reassuring, understanding in hindsight exactly why the original path she had wanted so badly had never actually opened for her. I am not telling you this story to promise you a specific workshop or a specific unexpected offer. I am telling you this so you understand that the growth currently happening beneath the surface of your own waiting may be forming in a direction you have not yet considered, the same way Kayamika's actual breakthrough was forming in a direction entirely different from the one she had spent 2 years fixated on. Whatever specific shape your own eventual breakthrough takes, trust that it is being genuinely prepared, even if it looks nothing like the picture you have been holding onto throughout this season. Do you remember the specific season you thought of at the beginning of this, the waiting that has stretched on longer than you originally expected it to? I want you to hear this now with the full weight it deserves. Do not let it pass by simply as another comforting sentence among many. Let it actually land. Every delay in your story has been building toward this exact season, the same way the invalid man at the pool received healing through a mechanism he had never once considered after 38 years of fixating on a single expected path, the same way Kayamika's actual breakthrough was quietly forming underneath a hobby she never once expected to matter professionally. Read that again if you need to. Let it settle fully before continuing on. You have spent so long believing this waiting was simply empty stillness, uncertain whether anything significant was genuinely happening beneath the surface of it. That was never true. Release that specific assumption tonight fully, trusting instead the pattern already confirmed through the growing seed, the man at the pool, and Kayamika's own unexpected path, that genuine growth continues even when it offers no visible evidence of itself. The seed in the ground grows completely regardless of whether the farmer understands the process. The man at the pool was healed through a method entirely outside his own expectation. Your own season of waiting has been growing this same real, invisible growth the entire time, whether or not you have had any way of measuring it yet. This is the sentence I want you to carry with you when you leave this moment tonight. This waiting was never wasted time. It was the underground portion of something already fully alive, and it is closer to breaking the surface than the length of this season has ever allowed you to believe. Carry that specific truth with you into every ordinary day that follows, until the moment this quiet growth finally becomes visible in whatever way it is meant to. Let me pray this over you now, the way I have already been praying it over you long before tonight. This prayer is not new. It has simply been waiting for the right moment to be fully spoken over you. Heavenly Father, I bring before you the one reading these words right now, carrying a season of waiting that has stretched on longer than they originally expected, tired of searching for visible progress during a season that has offered very little of it. Give them wisdom to see this waiting the way the growing seed in the parable is now understood, never empty, never wasted, simply the necessary, invisible portion of a growth process every bit as real as whatever remains still to come. Give them the same trust the farmer in that parable carried, resting in the reality of growth he could not see or fully understand, rather than exhausting himself trying to force or measure a process happening entirely beneath the surface. Teach them that rest, in this specific context, is not the same as passivity. It is simply trust extended toward a process genuinely too complex for constant management or measurement. Heal whatever fear has convinced them that this delay means something has gone wrong. Free them from interpreting every unmeasured day as evidence of failure, understanding that unmeasured growth is not the same thing as absent growth. Remind them that the man at the pool waited 38 years for a mechanism that was never actually going to be the one that finally healed him, proof that a long delay does not disqualify a genuine, coming breakthrough. Protect their mind from fixating so completely on one expected shape of breakthrough that they overlook an entirely different door quietly opening around them right now. Give them fresh eyes for the specific opportunities currently forming around them that do not match their original expectations, trusting that these unexpected doors may carry exactly the breakthrough they have been hoping for. Teach them instead to hold their own expectations loosely enough to actually notice what is genuinely available to them. Restore their confidence in this exact season, understanding that invisible growth is not lesser growth, and that the most important part of any process so often happens entirely out of view before anything becomes visible above the surface. Let them trust this exact principle applies fully to their own current circumstances, regardless of how ordinary or uneventful this season currently feels from the inside. Provide for whatever practical weight makes this particular waiting heavier than it needs to be, whether that is financial pressure, uncertainty about direction, or the quiet exhaustion of continuing to hope during a season that has offered very little visible confirmation. Meet them in the specific, ordinary stress this waiting adds to otherwise unrelated parts of their day, quiet distraction, low-grade restlessness, a heaviness that follows them even into tasks that have nothing directly to do with this particular season. Give them breakthrough in the exact place this waiting has felt the longest, and let them trust that the same growth quietly forming beneath the surface of Kayamika's own unexpected season is currently forming beneath the surface of theirs too. Let this growth continue steadily, uninterrupted by doubt, until it becomes complete enough to finally, visibly break through whatever surface has currently kept it hidden from view. Give them peace tonight that does not require visible progress in order to feel real, a peace built on trusting that invisible growth is genuinely, completely real, even during the exact days it offers no evidence of itself. Let this peace remain steady through however many more ordinary days this waiting still requires, trusting the outcome fully even while the exact timeline remains genuinely unclear. Strengthen them spiritually in whatever remains of this season, so that when the visible portion of this growth finally breaks the surface, they receive it with the same grateful surprise Kayamika felt discovering a path she had never once expected to matter. Give them the same openness Kayamika eventually carried, willing to notice and receive an unexpected door rather than remaining fixated only on the one she had originally planned for. If these words found the exact place in you that needed them tonight, let it be known, even if only to me, even if you never say it out loud to a single other person. Someone else you love has likely carried their own season of waiting that stretched on longer than expected, quietly wondering whether anything was actually happening beneath the surface of it, and they may need to hear tonight that their own invisible growth has been just as real as yours. Let them, too, release the specific isolation that unmeasured waiting tends to create, trusting that invisible growth is happening in far more lives than the visible silence around them currently suggests. You have not been standing still. You have been growing in exactly the way growth actually happens, quietly, beneath the surface, closer to becoming visible than the length of this season has ever allowed you to believe. Carry that specific truth with you into every ordinary day that follows, until the moment this quiet growth finally breaks the surface in whatever way it is meant to. Rest in this tonight. This waiting was never empty. It was the underground portion of something already fully alive, and it is closer to the surface than you know. Let that closeness carry you forward into whatever ordinary days still remain before this quiet growth finally, fully breaks through into view.